or you're not taking notes fast enough, it will be on YouTube. So that's it for me. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Michaela. I also work at LA Stage Alliance, and this will be my third-ish year. I don't really know, but I'm here too. And Courtney's online taking notes as well, and she is our marketing and media person. So yeah, go ahead.
You got mostly the whole team here. So if you have questions, let me know. And yes, I can make a copy of this available to you. This is a PDF that I'm using right now, but absolutely. So let us hit this real quick. So basically, I think there are 4 things that you can do that won't take a whole lot of time, although one of these could, which might help you out. Things like managing your accounts and passwords, and I'm going to go into detail on all of these in a sec. Updating websites from both the small to the large, looking at your email services, and then sort of leveling up your skills. And we'll talk about how you can do that and what those might be. But let's go to the passwords and accounts real quick, because this is a really, really big deal. First of all, if you are right now using the same password you've used, in say the last year, change it. For anything that you're doing, change it. The number of hacks of passwords and accounts, I don't know about you, but I constantly get emails from people with old email addresses saying, hi, we know your password and we're going to ask you for this money or something, something, something. The best way to find out whether or not you've been hacked is to go to this website, which is haveibeenpwned.com, P-W-N-E-D. What you do is you put in an email address and it will tell you which of the hacks that they have looked at or the data breaches and all of that over the last 8-9 years, your email address was included in. I did this with an email account that I don't use, that I haven't used in about 15 years. There was nothing. But my current personal email addresses, both of them, were included in 7 and 8 different breaches. It'll tell you the dates of the breach, and then you can go back and you can change those. So if you created the account after the breach, you're fine, but you may not know that. And so since you don't know that, another really great strategy is to use a password manager. I've got a few listed here, but there are really great things about password managers. One, they generate secure passwords, meaning you give it a string of things and say, okay, well, I want you to either do words, or I want you to do characters, I want you to use numeric things, whatever it might be, and it will generate a random password for you. Now, you might be thinking, that's crazy, I'll never remember it. And that's, of course, the purpose. You never want to be using the same password over and over for different sites, because once somebody has that, they can just go check all of your other sites. They can try other places with it, and they'll have the same password. That's not good. And basically, you only have to remember one password in order to have everything. So for instance, years ago, my brother got me 1Password as a birthday gift, and I just thought it was kind of dumb. But I started using it. And that was probably about 9-10 years ago. I don't even know. I now have over 1,000 different passwords and pieces of information in there, including credit card numbers, bank account numbers, social security, all of that stuff. All of that is encrypted on my machine. I can save it and encrypt it somewhere else if I want to be able to access it through my devices, which I do. The company 1Password, at least, and these other ones I think do similar stuff, but it's a little bit different. They do not have access to my passwords at all. So if there were ever a breach in theirs, they don't have it. It's all encrypted and salted and hashed and all of these things, which make them secure. So some people go, geez, well, if I'm putting that up on the internet, isn't that more dangerous? I don't think so, because this is really their business, right? This is the kind of thing that these guys do all the time. So I have less of a concern about that than me using the same or a variation of the same password for 4 or 5 years in all of my different accounts. So That's something that I would look at really strongly and right away. Now, you can get those generally for both an individual or for a small team or a family or something like that, and they're usually really cheap. Um, Oftentimes, I think now that they're annual fees, but it's not too bad. And we're actually looking into redoing ours at LA Stage for this very reason, because it's one of those things that you don't want to put it in an Excel spreadsheet and put it up on, and just email it around or anything like that. So these are a couple of things that I would do on passwords and accounts. One of the other really great features of these password things, by the way, is this idea of finding the old and compromised passwords. They do that for you. So for instance, in 1Password, mine tells me that I have emails that are, or passwords that are 6 months old, a year old, 3 years old, or older. They also will have oftentimes a service that they will check, have I been pwned for you? I think 1Passwords is called Watchtower or something like that. And it will tell you, hey, these 4 or 5 accounts have been hacked. So if you had a Target account years ago, it would say, okay, your Target account has been hacked. You need to change this password, which is a really great feature. I think Dashlane and LastPass both do that. Bitwarden is an open source software, so it's completely free. It may not always have the same capabilities as the others, and I don't remember if you have to host that or not yourself. I haven't looked into that in a while, but that's another option if you're more of a DIY person. So those are some things for passwords and accounts that I would look at. Let's see here. Is there any questions? Let's see. Before I move on to the next one. So technically, can every time I turn on the sound? You got the sound? Okay, hopefully you got that. All right, let's move on. If there are questions, just go ahead and drop them in the chat or jump in real quick and I'll see if I can answer those. So I wanted to get to a big one next, just because there's a lot of stuff here that we can cover about your websites. I don't know what organizations you guys are with, or if you're just individuals, either way. But there's so much that you can do to keep a website sort of up to date, or to make it better, to make it a better experience for other people, that sort of thing. But let's talk about a few things. So content. First off, remove or update any of your crufty content, right? So if you've got staff that are no longer there, or that staff are not reflected on your pages, clean that up, right? That seems like a no-brainer, because those are the people who you want to get in touch with. It's always, of course, best practice to leave some sort of way to reach out to them, whether it's just an email or a phone number, depending on sort of what your capabilities are. I would always leave something like that for them. Same with your board. I don't know that necessarily you need to have people give the people the ability to contact your board, but you do want to have that out. You want to know who the board members are. And I also think, this is a personal opinion, I think that the bio of all of these people is a really good idea, certainly on the board, just to let people know where they work, right? If you have a really great wide-ranging board that has a lot of different types of people from a lot of different walks of life, or are bringing different professional skills to your board, that's something that you need to know, and that people should know, especially if they're going to come and support you later on. They're going to look at that sort of thing. So that's important. Programs. If you pay attention to the LA Stage Alliance website at all, our programs have changed quite a bit over well, if you know the company at all, our programs have changed quite a bit over the 8 years that I've been here even. And so it's constantly a change for us. We're constantly having to add programs, pull programs off. So a number of the things that we used to keep on there thinking, oh, this will be great for SEO, and this, it's not. It's not. You don't want to duplicate content between different pages, because Google and things like that are not fans. You want to clean up those programs so that they reflect what you're actually doing. It's also possible, I guess, that it's a liability, I've heard, an issue, where if you say you're doing things that you're not really doing, it could be a problem. That I don't know about. I don't know about the legality of that, but that's something that I would think about. Any tips on SEO optimization? We'll get to that in a bit. And a lot of that will depend, something else I'm going to talk about is whether or not you're self-hosting or you're not, and also the type of site that you've got, how you built it. We'll talk about that in a bit. Another thing you can look at is looking at your accessibility of your website. There is a great little plugin you can get for your browser called Wave. And you get it through webaim.org. And it shows you where you can stand to make the accessibility of your website better. So let me see if I can share real quick a different page. So here I am on the onstage.la page. And here's the little plugin that I've added for Wave. And what it does is once you click on it, it tells you if you have errors and what they are, like contrast errors, if there are alerts for things that can be done a little bit better, different structural elements, all of this. And then you can actually go and see where they are. So for instance, on this site, it's showing us that we've got an unordered list is present, which is fine if we talk about it properly. Whoops. Oh man, got to hit the button again. Here is a button for our search bar, and it's telling us that the button is empty or has no value text. So oftentimes you'll need like an image or something. Uh-oh, my cat's getting loud. So there'll be an alt tag for images, which you want so that a screen reader, if somebody is visually impaired and can't see this, that they'll be told what's on the page, that sort of thing. So a lot of that has to do with these things. And then when you get down to contrast errors, let's see where I have a contrast error. I think there's one down here. Yes. So something down here on this button, very low contrast between the foreground and the background. So it might not be enough, again, for somebody who's visually impaired to really see what's happening on the page. Should have closed the door. Okay, so that's a Wave. So that's accessibility. I think that's a really great tool that a lot of people don't take care of. Now, this is mostly important once your site is built, or if you are building your site, get out of the window, or if you're building the site yourself so that you can check it out. Oftentimes, if you're using, say, WordPress themes or things like that, they may have done a lot of that for you, but once it's done, you can check it out. And then you can still make tweaks. So that's a really great tool. All right, let me go back to this. My cat wants to visit, see what's happening. Try and keep her from walking on the page. Okay, and then the big one, obviously, is if you had to rebuild your site. We'll talk a little bit about some of the elements of that. I don't necessarily want to get into saying rebuild it, although I will say this. If your site hasn't been redone in, say, the last 3 years, you really need to do it. I imagine that everybody on the call has, but if it hasn't, and it's only being updated with like maybe new content, that's a problem. I would also suggest that if you are working in, I don't know, something like, say, Dreamweaver or something like that, where you're writing the HTML each time, don't do that. That's a waste of your time. And though it's cool that you can do that, get a content management system like a WordPress or maybe Wix or Squarespace or something like that, whatever it is, so that you just have to update content. You don't have to deal with the rest of it all the time. It's just so much simpler. Yes, I'm sure everybody's cat got very interested all of a sudden. Anyway, so let's move on to, let's see. So website, let's talk about speed for a second. This is something that you can test yourself anytime. Webpagetest.org. Check it out. I will show you real quickly something that I did here earlier today. I just wanted to see what, say, this is webpagetest.org. So you go here and you enter in a web page. You tell them where you want to test from. Since we're in LA and most of the people who are going to be hitting our sites are in LA area, I'm going to use the browser for Chrome, and then I'm going to start the test. So now it's going to queue it up. It's going to run it 3 times. It's going to give you averages of all that. And then it's going to give you letter scores, right? It's a fantastic little tool just to get an idea of how quickly your page is working. There are a lot of strategies to help speed it up, but a couple of the really big things that you need to know is that you want the page to load within 3 seconds. Basic bottom line. If a page doesn't load within 3 seconds, you have a lot greater chance of people just leaving. So here, this is saying that our load time was 4.6 seconds. Not great. First contentful paint, which is this area right here, is basically saying once you start printing content. Now that's important because as long as things start hitting the page, people feel like things are going well, right? So it's down to 3.3 seconds. Speed index, fully loaded, was 4.85. Not great. We're going to have to look at that for us. But you'll see that these other things we got for compressing the transfer, compressing the images, static content. We're not using a CDN, which is a content delivery network. We can talk about that in a second. But this isn't bad. When we used to do this a couple of years ago, we'd see C's and D's for everything. So we've made some progress. We're going to continue to keep making progress. But this is another great tool to check things out here. Let us go back to, I should just save the desktop. That's easier. Okay. All right. So in that strategy, right, you can do this through whether or not you're hosting your site with you built it, or if WordPress, say, is doing it. And I'm going to make an assumption that most people are on WordPress sites or the Wix Squarespace type thing. Things that you can do is compress images or do what they call lazy loading, which is basically what'll show initially and what'll load initially are only the images you'll see on the page. And that anything that you have to scroll to get added as you scroll up. So you'll see this a lot of times in mobile devices. You'll see this a lot of times, and that's actually where the strategy came from. You'll see this a lot on websites where you hit it originally, you get a bunch of stuff, and as you scroll, all of a sudden the images pop in. It's because they're lazy loading them. It saves bandwidth, makes everything else load quicker, and then it gets to it. Compressing images is important. I know that if any of you are on the onstage.la and I talk to you about, you know, images that you send me, sometimes they're enormous. They're way too big, or they haven't been compressed. And typically what I'll do is I'll not only make sure that we crop them properly, but then we'll also compress them so that you don't have the same problems of large package loads hitting somebody's browser. And this is really important in mobile devices, right? Because all of those images have to get loaded into my phone. And the bigger an image is, if the server, all right, we're going to digress real quick. So generally, if you only have one image that you've put in, it'll hit this phone. And if the browser has to say, oh, geez, it's really huge, I got to shrink it, that takes computing time, that takes all sorts of things. So it's going to slow it down. So oftentimes what some of these programs will do is they'll actually create 3 or 4 different versions of your image. And that's one of the things that we do as well, right? Where you'll make small versions, middle size, and large versions. You'll still maybe size those, but instead of loading the huge image into my phone, I'm going to load the small image. So that can be compressing it. You can compress it ahead of time. There's a great program on the Mac called Image Optim, OPTIM, which I use all the time. Compresses JPEGs, GIFs, and PNG files. It's fantastic. Another thing is similar, like minifying or combining files. This is something that generally your system will do. If you're on, say, a WordPress site, or like, let's say you're on like Bluehost or GoDaddy or one of those, and they have a cPanel or whatever, they may have the option to do that where you can minify files or compress files, or what they call gzip files, same thing. Absolutely put that in. It makes those things that are smaller, that are going over the wire from the server through the networks to the computer, to the device that it's hitting. So anytime you can minify things, that's great. And then another sort of technical one is deferring JavaScript loading. This is an option you may see in WordPress themes or whatever. And again, we don't want to get too crazy technical, but the idea behind these is that whenever you start sending stuff to a page, the browser is trying to figure out what to print first. Unfortunately, it has to load JavaScript before it'll print anything. That causes problems because so many pages now, when all the things that the bells and whistles, things that move, that make it really engaging, are usually JavaScript oriented. So it pauses the content from loading. So by deferring that to the end of a page, when it reads everything out, it lets everything else load first, and then it adds all the bells and whistles. So that's something that if you develop on your own, something you really need to be doing. And if you have the option to change that, you should do as well. And then on this WordPress specific stuff, absolutely reduce or remove the number of plugins you use, and keep the ones you do use updated. Again, any plugin that you're not using that you're loading is taking memory and then bandwidth. You don't want to do that. So remove those. And you can reduce them. I'll talk a little bit in a second about some of the ways that you could reduce them. But just getting rid of them is great. And keeping them updated is the most important. That's with that and your themes, because the longer things are out of date, if they're using an older technology in any way, shape, or form, they're more susceptible to being hacked. I don't know if anybody there's been hacked. I've had personal sites hacked. I've seen other sites hacked. I got a friend who just had one hacked. It's not fun. It takes a lot of time to clean them out. So the best thing you can do is try and be preventative about it. And also on that is updating the newer themes. Again, use something that you haven't, use something that's been written within the last 1 or 2 years, at least. 1, because they're going to still provide tech support on it. And 2, because they will have been using some of the newest technologies, which is an important thing in sort of keeping up to date on security issues. There was something about that I just recalled that I was going to say. Update to newer themes. Are there any questions while I try and remember what that might have been? Oh yeah, Michelle, I totally agree with you. Making friendly websites mobile is a huge difference. Absolutely. And it's one of the things that Google looks at. If you've been in any of my voter training sessions this last year, they really ding you if you aren't doing mobile first design. So it needs to work well on smaller devices and then get larger and larger. And capabilities can increase as that happens, but they're going to ding your search results if you're not. And we all know what it's like. I mean, again, if you used our old lastagetics.com versus onstage.la, it's a huge difference. I mean, we still have some things that we can improve on, obviously, but it's enormously different. All right, so let's see what's up. Oh God, yeah, Deanne, I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay, let's see here. Where are we now? So hosting. Another thing that you can do is maybe look at your hosting. Anecdotally, so when I took over our tech stack back in January of 2014, I did a quick audit of all of the things that we were paying for. We had 2 different web hosts, one for LA Stage Alliance, one for this stage. Well, at that time it was LA Stage Times. And we also had an AWS account because we were managing the free night of theater. And that was a national thing. We had 28 regions around the country. So we had this huge, so we were spending over $1,200 a month on all of our hosting. And at a time when we were strapped for cash. So we changed all of that within like 2 months. I had to go through and clean all that stuff out, figure out what we were going to do. What did we really need still? What did we not? We went from, I think we were using somebody like DreamHost or something, and we were paying some obscene amount for DreamHost, where we had one account, we were spending still like $180 a month for some reason. I'm still not sure why. And we've moved to a different host where we're hosting 3 different sites, well, 2 different sites, and we're paying less than $50 a month, and it's a lot cheap, it's a lot faster, it's a lot more secure, and it's managed, which is one of the things I want to talk about here. So you can self-host on something like, geez, I don't even know what, like the Bluehosts, SiteGrounds, DreamHost, HostGator, things like that, really dirt cheap, I think. You can also go to wordpress.org, something like that, still get your domain names. Or you can go to a managed host, which is something like what we use, where we pay a little bit more, but they handle all of the other infrastructure, right? they're handling security updates. They're handling core updates to our WordPress sites. They update their hardware, and so we get the benefit of that. It's awesome. It can be a little bit more expensive, but not having to worry about updating that is fantastic. And that reminds me of the one thing that I wanted to talk about real quickly here, updating the newer themes. That's actually something that's both here and in this managed version. So when you get a managed host, they will update your core WordPress install, but they will not update your themes or your plugins for you. You still need to do that, and you need to stay on top of that. One of the things about that is that if you have WordPress themes, you want to make sure that you're always developing those as child themes. So you're basically duplicating the theme and then making all of any changes that you want to make, if you want to make them, to the child theme. Because if you ever go and update that theme again, if you haven't done that, you'll wipe out everything you just did. You lost it. That's not fun. We've all lost work. I mean, a lot of us probably were doing shows that we've lost right now. We're going, shit, what are we going to do about that? But that's the idea, right? You use a child theme, and you're safe knowing that one of these managed hosts doesn't deal with that, right? They're not going to update those for you. You're not going to lose that work. You're just going to get the WordPress constantly updated, which is great. And then a couple of the options there, right, of the Wix and Squarespace. People absolutely love those. Those are a little bit more expensive. But one of the nice things is you can get everything there, right? You can get email through them if you want it. If you're just mostly posting content, or I'm sorry, not posting content, you don't have a lot of stuff changing all the time. You have your resume up, some photos, maybe a gallery, whatever. Those are probably great. There's, excuse me, no reason not to use them. If you're a company though, perhaps WordPress or Drupal or Joomla or a static site generator, if you're a DIY person, something like that might be more appropriate because you're going to be adding shows. You might be adding the artists all the time. You're going to be generating more content. And so a content management system will be much better for you. So that said, oh, we're not going to get to that quite yet. What you can look for in one of these new hosts. Let's say you decide you're going to start evaluating those. Obviously look for the security. What is their security? What are their practices? Do they provide security for your account? Generally they will. That's one of the benefits. Check and see what their server count is. There are some of these small little hosts that are dirt cheap, $2.99 a month or whatever, and they have maybe 3 servers around the country. That might be okay, maybe not, because now if they're so dirt cheap, how many hundreds of thousands of accounts are you running on those servers? So you obviously want to have a higher number of servers. A CDN, a content delivery network. Some of these will offer them free. Absolutely use it. Basically what they do is they have servers all around the country. They're just serving images and the JavaScript and all of those things, the fonts, whatever. And because they're closer to where people are actually hitting them, it's actually a little bit faster. So a CDN is absolutely awesome. If you get that for free, even better. SSDs are just solid state drives as opposed to the old hard drives. It's basically the difference between one of those big hard drives you carry around and the USB, the little flash, but better. Their magnitude's faster. So if they're really dirt cheap and they're offering hard drives, don't do it. Go somewhere where you can find an SSD. There are tons of them around. Most providers are offering them now because they're cheap and they're so much better performing. And then free SSL. SSL is the thing that keeps everything secure socket layer. The company called Let's Encrypt, somebody that personally I've been donating to for years, they provide free certificates for SSL. So you can set this up. If somebody is charging you a monthly or even annual fee for SSL, move your hosting account. This is free. It's been free for over 2 years. They're fantastic. It's all automated. You should not be paying for SSL. It's not hard to set up. And if you decide, well, I don't want to leave them, but I don't want to pay it, stop paying it, and you can figure out how to put free SSL if you're on a WordPress site or whatever. There are plugins that'll help you do it. You don't need to worry about it. Most of the hosting accounts now will do that. You should not be paying for it, just straight up. So I was talking about WordPress, sort of WordPress specific things. So for those of you who aren't on WordPress, just give me a second, but a lot of this is similar to some of the things you may face, maybe not, I don't know. So you can get themes or page builders or just use their built-in UI, which is called Gutenberg now. And again, it's always about cost versus control. How much do you want to pay for not having to do as much, for an ease of use or less burden on you? And generally that comes down to infrastructure that we were just talking about, the SSDs, how many servers, all that kind of stuff. Just know that oftentimes, like the themes you buy on like Envato or layout.org or whatever they are, some of those, they're really hard to change. If they're a theme club or somebody, they're putting out a new theme every month. They have a huge volume of people that they need to start supporting. The changes that you might want to make, they may not be built into the theme, in which case it's going to be hard for you to do that. Then you're going to have to add plugins that hopefully will respect it. And oftentimes, if you add a plugin and there's a problem, they tell you to turn the plugin off, and now the functionality you wanted is not there. They can be great, dirt cheap, and you can use them for a couple of years, so why not? But it's something to think about. Page builders like Wix and Squarespace, you don't ever worry about the infrastructure. You just build a page, you drag and drop. They're fantastic. Again, they can be a little bit more expensive, but they're great. And having said that, WordPress rebuilt their UI a year and a half ago into a thing called Gutenberg, which does the same drag and drop stuff. So you can now build a WordPress site in the same way. You can create templates, you can create blocks to reuse things, and once you've built it, then it just fills it with the content that you create. So that's an awesome thing as well, something that I would look at. If you're interested in that sort of thing and have a WordPress site, I would look at Elementor, Divi, Beaver Builder, and Visual Composer. And full disclosure, when we redid ours, we had we had two, This Stage and LA Stage Alliance. When we redid ours, I looked at a number of these. I've loved Divi for a long time, but Elementor is the one we decided to go with. And last summer, Michaela rebuilt our website in a week, having never seen Elementor before. We're still looking to work on it, right? Because it was just, okay, we wanted to get it out, get something new, get something fresh. Amazing. And we've been tweaking things as we go, but I love it. Divi, Beaver Builder, Visual Composer also have people who are absolutely in love with them. So explore all of those. And if you ever have questions about any of those, want to ask about them, I'm happy to look at stuff and talk you through it too. Oh yeah, and Courtney did This Stage. So both of them rebuilt a website having never seen it before. Yeah, pretty amazing, I thought. So let's see. All right, 2:36. I'm going to blow through these last two and then see if we have any questions. You can always look at your email as well. I mean, I know people don't really think about this very often, but first of all, remove or suspend any old accounts because sometimes those can be used for spamming type purposes. So make sure that they're not just open if you're not using them or checking them. If you use a domain, if you're hosted at, a lot of times when people first get a domain name, they host at, say they registered it through GoDaddy. They'll host it there, and then they'll also use their email service. I'm not a big fan of that personally, but I would look at other providers. If you're a nonprofit, definitely look at Google Suite because it's free. Now you're selling your soul to Google, but many of us have done that already. So, but it's free. I mean, it's hard to beat that. And it's got an amazing amount of functionality for being free. Office 365, as I understand it, I'm on a Mac. We're all Mac, so I don't know for sure. But from what I've read, they have both an email component as part of Office 365, and then they have a pro version, which allows you to get into Teams and other things like that. So if you're on Windows machines, that's something to definitely take a look at. And then things like Rackspace does both just an email thing and something else. Rackspace is great, gotten great reviews. They're a really big infrastructure provider to a lot of other companies. So there's somebody to use. And then smaller companies that do email or a little bit more. Zoho Workplace, it's part of the Zoho suite, similar to Google Suite, but for smaller businesses. Some of those can get a little bit expensive, but their Workplace is fairly inexpensive, which is great. And then a personal favorite of mine is Fastmail, which is based out of Australia. They do email. You can also do business email. I've actually been using them for one of my personal email accounts for years, and they're great. They have a little app that you can use instead of Apple Mail or whatever if you want, which is lightning fast. But they're a really great company. And again, I like a lot of their security practices. You have to set up different profiles for different devices. You can dump it in one. You don't have to change the password and everything else. It's fantastic. Let's see. What's the last one? Oh, and then training, right? You know, a lot of us are on reduced hours. Or maybe you're like me and at night you're thinking, geez, I would be at my show, but I don't have to do anything now. What else could I do? Well, there's time to learn some new things, right? Depending on what you're interested in, what your interests are, there are huge amounts of free courses available at all of these sites. Allison, edX, Coursera, all of those, or edX and Coursera specifically, you know, places like Harvard, Michigan, Berkeley, MIT, places like that, they all have courses there, fantastic and free. Allison has that as well. Skillshare is, I think, more geared towards arts and crafts things, which is interesting. Udacity, Lynda, Udemy, if you're interested in programming or anything else, I mean, they have lifestyle and marketing and finance and IT, whatever. All of those things are there and free as well. You know, just take a look at those. Those are things that I thought of when I was looking, and I thought, oh, well, you know what? I might as well pass those on. I've taken classes at Udemy, and I've looked at the classes at edX for some of those, you know, college courses, but man, I'm an old dog, man. I don't know that I want to go back and do that. So, but look at them. They're cool. They offer some really great things. And that's it. That's all I've got for this talk. So, you know, I'd be happy to open it up if people have questions about any of that or anything else that I can answer. I would be happy to. Oh, looping back around to SEO best practices. So, Andrew, are you best practices are separate from the platform you're on, but do you happen to be on WordPress or anything like that? You're on Wix. So Wix is going to take care of that for you. So what's interesting is that's one of the other nice benefits about the page builder companies like Wix and Squarespace, right? Is they're going to handle a lot of that for you in terms of structural SEO. In terms of the content, there are a few rules that you want to follow. One, don't lift your content from somebody else, right? Google actually searches for those kinds of things. If they find something that's too close in content to somebody else's site, you can get flagged for that. They're notorious about not telling you what PageRank their algorithm actually looks for, but that's one of the things. They also look for not only similar content, but duplicated content within your own site, right? So if you just have a bunch of pages, especially that might be hidden publicly, but that are linked sort of that the public might not see. So in other words, in order for a page to be seen in order for something to be seen on the page, it has to be visible. However, you can put something on a page and have it not be visible. And for years, that's what did they call that? Search stuffers or result stuffers or whatever, I can't remember the name. They would do is they would copy a page and then they would put, and I actually got hit with this once. They would put an enormous amount of like porn sites, gambling sites, all of those things, all of links to all of those things at the bottom of your page, but they would hide it so that people couldn't see it, but machines could. So that when Google would come and look through your page, they would see that and go, okay, so these other places are important. And that would raise their rankings. That was one of the things that they would do. So, you know, if you have big content sections, that are duplicated in all sorts of areas of your website, don't do that. What you want to do is link to your pages when it's important, because they count links to and from things as making them more, what's the word? Authoritative, right? They're trying to show you not just everything they can find, but the things that are most important. So outside pages that link to you help to show your authority in something, and that's an important thing. So that's something to do. Let's see, subsections you need to populate. Oh yeah, right. So the question here about the subsections that Wix has with making things that page puts out are consistent with the pages you create. Now, I'm not real familiar with how Wix works in terms of they build content. Similarly to like WordPress or something, I imagine that you create a template, a frame, and then you add content to that. Now, once you've created the frame, you probably want to save it as a template if you can, so that you can then just duplicate. You can just add content to a page and say, apply this template, this page template, so that it's creating more and more content. And that's sort of what I was saying, is that if you have a lot of stuff, like as a designer, I imagine each new show, you're going to have photos that you're going to put up, stuff like that. There's got to be some sort of a blog capability for Wix and Squarespace and something like that, which is basically what WordPress does, where it just, you've got a template of the page and you just add stuff to it, and then you can add images and things like that. I imagine Wix and Squarespace have that as well. So I would look for that and see if that helps. Lizzie is asking if we sell tickets for any of our sites, or do we do that through Brown Paper Tickets or some other service? So we sell tickets. We sell discounted tickets for our members through onstage.la, the page that I showed you here. Whoops. So this is the where we sell discount tickets for our members. We don't sell through Brown Paper Tickets, and I know that there's a bit of an issue right now with Brown Paper Tickets holding on to cash. We also don't do that. We changed that process when we introduced this new site about 1.5 years ago, because for this very reason, we didn't want to be holding on to people's cash if there was a problem. You guys sold those tickets, you should get that money. Now, if those shows get canceled and all of that, then there's an issue on our end because we have to deal with that. But yeah, so if we sell through our site, what apps do we recommend? Not sure exactly what that means. If you can explain that a little bit better, I'll get back to that. Let me look at Jennifer's here. New theater company put together a website. Guidance on which type of host would be best. We don't need anything big, but I don't know HTML. So you know Wix, and a friend recommended WordPress you don't know. Great. So here's the thing. Just like I was saying before, WordPress now has a way to build sites very much like Wix, either through Gutenberg, which is their general basic free UI, or through Elementor or some of these other things, which also have free versions or paid versions. I think if you're just building a quick site, just want something up right away, you can do it with any of those. Something like a Wix or a Squarespace, if you pay monthly, it'll be more expensive, but you could just put something up so you have a landing page where people can go and get some basic information. As a new company, I think the big question to ask yourself is, how often are you going to be adding content, right? Years ago, I rebuilt a website for a theater company in town that I was a member of. And at that point, we already had about 14, 15 years of history that we wanted to bring over. So just building a quick landing page and all wasn't going to work. We had to have the content management, because we had to put the shows in, we had all these other information and images and all that. You guys may not have that. So a simple page, even at GoDaddy or something like that, just to start is great. And then come up with like a 3 or 4 month plan or 6 months to say, what do we want to be telling people? What do we want? What are we offering? How much are we going to interact with this? And how much do we want people to interact with us through that? And that will be the way, I think, to answer the question as to what's best.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please. Good. Absolutely.
So part of what I was doing was I was doing a lot of freelance marketing for small theater companies. And this was an issue that got brought up a lot, is I 10 out of 10 would recommend Wix if you're starting from scratch. It also has a CRM system built into it, which is really important. And the only issue with Wix is that it's really hard to change, like, they call it themes, which is like your infrastructure. So if you started as a landing page and then you decide you want a blog option, it's really hard to transfer to a blog option. So not that either one of them like costs more or anything. And there are things that you can do, like build your own email. Like I could have it as at Michaela Buckley through because that's my personal website. Email, CRM, you can sell products. Not like tickets, but like if you were to sell like merch, you could do that through Wix. And things like that. So if you're starting with it's also so much more user friendly. So even if you have someone that's like an intern or a volunteer that doesn't know how to use these things, it's so much easier for them to be able to figure out how to add something. So I always really recommend Wix, especially if you don't know a lot of HTML or you're not going to have a lot of time, because they do a lot of that stuff for you and you can build on it.
Yeah, we just got a note here from Michelle who said she started her own company and really enjoyed that using Wix. And I think that's, again, the other thing to remember is none of this is forever, right? Jump in. I mean, certainly when you build a company, you just start it, you throw it up against the wall, see if it works. So if it's small and it's easy and quick, I would say do that. See then what you want, what you need. And ultimately, if you want to change, I mean, one of the nice things, like I was saying about, like, again, we went to Elementor, right? You could build that kind of thing in WordPress within a day. They have things like a landing page. They have a thing where people can sign up just to get your email. You can integrate with all those things. But oftentimes that means you want somebody who's got a little bit more knowledge about all of that. So to Michaela's point, if you basically don't know anything about any of that and just don't want to have a headache, I think Wix and Squarespace are absolutely worth it. People like me who want to get under the hood, actually build the thing and all of that, I mean, if it were me, I would probably spin up a server on DigitalOcean, which is something that I run, I control, I do all of that stuff. I put up a WordPress site, I throw all these things, but who wants to do that? Not most people. Most tech people would, but that's not what you guys are, right? You're an artist or an arts administrator who's saying, I just need to do this.
Yeah, and for like we mentioned, I rebuilt LA Stage Alliances in Elementor, and that was because we had so many things that already existed that I was adjusting. But when I was doing my own personal website, when I was freelancing, Wix, I got that up and running in like a couple of hours. There was a little bit more urgency because I was freelancing and trying to get my name out there. But if you have the time, maybe try and build something that's a little more substantial, like Mark is saying. But if you just want to get started and play around, like Wix is fantastic and has a lot of other like business resources that I feel like a lot of these other things don't necessarily have. And then there was also a question about like publicizing your programs. Yeah, it's kind of like it's the same thing as like your resume. If it's something that you can say was either like a skill set so for us, we have a lot of programs that we're not doing anymore. And so instead of saying like, oh, well, we did A, B, C, and D, I'll say, well, these fall under our values of collaborative resource development, such as we worked on Free Night of Theater, we worked on Space Finder, we created the Subtext podcast that now is American Theater Magazine. Like we did create a lot of those stuff, and it's all about just like, how do you pitch it? But I wouldn't call any of those our programs, and by publicizing so many of our past programs, we can't focus on the programs that you're actually creating. So if you are, a theater company that also has outreach for children, and also doing one project does not make a program. So just be careful of that. And it is important to have those on there because we had people who not from LA looking at our website very close to the Ovation Awards. And a lot of them said like, well, what is the context? They didn't really think we were a real organization because they didn't understand LA theater. So making sure that get some separate eyes, maybe someone that isn't necessarily in the theater community, to look at your page to say like, well, I don't know what this means. I don't know where this is coming from. So the legalities of your program really only count when you start going after like big funders or big grants. But that can still affect like your SEO, because if I'm looking for like children's theaters, but you're not an actual like children's theater, but you have once worked with children, that's not helpful, because I'm still not going to use your theater company, because that's not really what I was looking for. I don't know if that helps or answers that question.
I'm going to go back to Lizzie. So you're just asking if we recommend selling tickets directly off of Wix site instead of a third-party vendor. I don't know what the capabilities of selling tickets to events are from Wix. One of the reasons that I like things like, I don't know, like Eventbrite, Dime, whatever, Vendini, is that that's what they do. They're built for that. Again, brown paper tickets I know is having some problems right now with like cash flow stuff to people, but I would, for me, I would prefer to link off of Wix to my other site. And that's generally what will happen in most websites anyways. You're not always selling through your own. So depending on how many seats you're going to be selling, all of that kind of stuff. I know that there are plugins for WordPress that actually do that, that'll sell tickets to events. They're not always as fully featured as other things. There are a lot of different services to sell tickets, and we've looked at a lot of them over the years. There are two that I sort of use right now, which I really like, for the Ovation Awards, but we only do one event a year, right? We don't do a lot, so we don't have the same, and we have we have somewhat different requirements for what that is. So I would say probably my suggestion would be to use a third party. I don't know if anybody else on here has used Wix to sell tickets and what that experience was like, but I would be curious if anybody did. Oh, Katie.
Wix, they connect really, really well with Eventbrite, which if you're only doing an event every couple of months, Eventbrite works really well. Whereas like Vendini or Dime, you have to pay annual fees or monthly fees, even if you're not producing an event.
Yeah, and also if you're looking for something like that, certainly just look for things that charge you a per ticket fee, right? Like, especially if you're one of our smaller companies who produce maybe once a year, definitely look at just something that you just pay a per ticket fee. So Katie, can I provide any update on any plan improvements still in progress? Oh, I've got a list still as long as your arm. We've got stuff sitting on a staging server that we're still testing that's need to be rolled out. We've got other things behind that in the queue that are ready to be rolled out. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's coming that I think probably right now, because of the state of everybody and everything, we can still do a little bit of work on, but I don't have a date for you as to when I'll be able to roll it out. But yeah, and part of the listing, all of the listing stuff at some point I need to revisit, because we've learned a lot in the last year and a half about where things can be and what we need to add and what we don't, or what we need to get and what we don't. So we want to make that process better. And, you know, always email me if you have suggestions about things that you like, dislike, whatever, send them my way. Because like I said, I have a roadmap of things that we're going to do. I've got stuff that's already in the queue, stuff that's going to be coming up, and depending on what those things are, they might be a higher priority than what I've already got. Thank you. Yeah, so we've been here about an hour. I feel good about it. If there are other questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, we're recording this, so we will be able to put this up elsewhere for you to take a look afterwards. And as I just mentioned to Katie, if you've got any questions about either the onstage.la, any of our technical stuff, our tech stacks, anywhere, anything, email me. I'm at mdoerr, D-O-E-R-R, at lastagealliance.com. You can find my email on lastagealliance.com on our staff page. What else? I think that's it. Are there any other questions that anybody has? Doesn't look like it. Doesn't sound like it. So I guess we'll just shut it down. Thank you so much for coming. This was our second, or I guess our second or third. Do we have one again next week, Michaela?
Yes, we will have one next week, and that'll be announced soon.
All
But we'll
right. So,
probably stick with the same Zoom format. It seemed to work really well.
yeah, cool. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for coming, and over and out.